Is this thing rigged before it even gets started? Agenda surrounding women's basketball? If you check the right boxes, blah, 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 you get elevated? It just so happens her and Paige Bueckers checks some of the same boxes.
What we are witnessing right now in the landscape of American women's basketball is not just a sporting rivalry, it is a geopolitical theater. It is a collision between an irresistible force and an immovable object. The force is the commercial and cultural revolution led by Caitlin Clark. The object is the entrenched, calcified institutional power of what many critics are now calling the UConn Mafia.
It seems like Gino's trying to push his girl to be a replacement for Sue Bird, when I think for most of us, the obvious replacement would be who? Caitlin Clark.
Within USA Basketball, if you thought the drama surrounding the 2024 Olympic roster snub was the end of the story, you need to wake up. That was just the prologue. We are currently watching the chessboard being set for the next 4 years, and the moves being made right now in the shadows behind closed doors are designed to ensure one specific outcome: the coronation of the establishment's chosen heir, and the systematic marginalization of the outsider who dared to become bigger than the brand. Today, we are opening the dossier. We are going to audit the invisible architecture of USA Basketball, the suspicious timing of recent administrative appointments, and the specific tactical trap being laid at the training camp in Durham, North Carolina. We are going to expose the mechanics of the power play that is pitting the legacy of Gino Auriemma against the future of the WNBA. This is the story of how an institution protects itself, and why the game you see on the court is only half the battle. To understand why there is so much anxiety surrounding Caitlin Clark's potential exclusion or sidelining for the 2026 World Cup, you have to look at the people signing the checks and making the lists. This isn't about conspiracy theories, it is about organizational capture. The influence of the University of Connecticut on Team USA is not merely a matter of them producing good players. It is a matter of administrative dominance. It is a feedback loop where UConn success begets USAB authority, which in turn selects more UConn talent, creating a closed ecosystem that is hostile to foreign organisms. The most significant shift in this entire saga happened quietly, away from the headlines. It was the structural reorganization of the USA women's national team leadership. Historically, the team was selected by a committee, but recently, following the model established on the men's side by Grant Hill, USAB has moved toward a managing director model. And who did they appoint to this unilateral position of power? Sue Bird. Now let's be clear, Sue Bird is a legend. Her resume is unassailable, but her appointment represents the ultimate consolidation of power into the hands of a UConn insider. In this role, Bird possesses influence over roster construction and coaching staff selection that is virtually unchecked. She is an indisputable icon of the game, but she is also Gino Auriemma's most famous disciple and a public ambassador for the UConn brand. This creates an inherent, unresolvable conflict of interest. When you are evaluating a non-UConn rival like Caitlin Clark against a UConn protege like Paige Bueckers, can you truly be objective? Bird's mandate includes the 2026 World Cup and the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. This effectively gives the UConn Alumni Network control over the next 4 years of the program. The concern, articulated by analysts and critics alike, is that Bird will prioritize the preservation of the UConn culture she helped build over the adaptation required to integrate a singular force like Clark. And she's not alone. Standing right beside her is Jennifer Rosati. Remember her? She's the chair of the selection committee, the woman who sat in front of microphones in 2024 and told the world that Caitlin Clark was left off the team for basketball reasons. Rosati is a former UConn point guard. She played for Auriemma. She has served in administrative roles within the Connecticut basketball sphere for decades. Her professional history is inextricably linked to that ecosystem. Her continued presence in the hierarchy ensures that the philosophy which excluded Clark in 2024 remains the governing doctrine in 2025. When Rosati spoke about checking boxes and veteran experience, critics saw it for what it was: coded language designed to protect incumbents and maintain the status quo. It was a way to say she's not one of us without actually saying it. And then, looming over all of this, is the shadow influence of Gino Auriemma. He might not be the official coach of Team USA anymore, but his fingerprints are on every doorknob in the building. His recent comments explicitly framing Paige Bueckers as the successor to Sue Bird while ignoring Clark entirely are not accidental. They are a strategic narrative push. Auriemma is engaging in a psychological operation. He knows that his former players are now the decision makers. When he speaks, he isn't just talking to the press. He's giving marching orders to the infrastructure he built. He is utilizing soft power to ensure the dynasty continues. This is what we call roster squatting. The UConn conspiracy is supported by decades of data. Critics argue that USAB has historically functioned as a postgraduate program for Auriemma's system, prioritizing familiarity with the UConn way over raw talent or production from other systems. We saw it in 2016 when Candace Parker, the reigning MVP and a Tennessee legend, was left off the Rio roster. That was the signal that the Tennessee era was dead and the UConn hegemony was total. We saw it in 2020 when Nneka Ogwumike, another MVP from Stanford, was left home, and we saw it in 2024 with Clark. The pattern is distinct. Exceptional talents from rival programs are frequently subjected to a higher burden of proof than UConn alumni. UConn players are grandfathered in. They are given the benefit of the doubt. They are fast-tracked based on system fit. Meanwhile, outsiders have to be twice as good to get half the respect. The appointment of Sue Bird essentially formalizes this pipeline. It allows the UConn Brain Trust to curate the team without the checks and balances of an independent committee. Now let's talk about the weapon they are going to use to execute this power play. Her name is Paige Bueckers, and let me be clear, Paige Bueckers is a phenomenal basketball player. This is not about her lack of talent. This is about how her talent is being weaponized to manufacture a rivalry and justify the exclusion of Caitlin Clark. Geno Auriemma has actively engaged in a media campaign to crown Bueckers before she has played a single minute of senior national team basketball. In November 2025, he made headlines by stating, "Since Sue retired, there hasn't really been a clear cut. Here's the successor. I do know Paige has all the things she needs." Listen to the phrasing, Sue Bird's successor. He isn't looking for the best point guard in the world. He isn't looking for the player who generates the most offense. He is looking for the player who reminds him of Sue Bird. He is framing the criteria to favor the player who plays within the system, Paige, rather than the player who breaks the system, Clark. It is an erasure of reality. Caitlin Clark leads the WNBA in assists. She is the engine of the entire league's economy. But Auriemma dismisses her viability as a successor because she plays the wrong way. He talks about self-awareness. He says Paige has self-awareness and knows she might have a different role. That is a dog whistle. In the context of USA basketball, self-awareness is code for deference. It means you shut up, you sit down, and you kiss the ring. It implies that Clark's high usage rate and dominant ball handling style are liabilities, not assets. It implies that she is selfish. By appealing to Sue Bird, his former player and current boss of USAB, to select Bueckers, his current player, as her own replacement, Auriemma is closing the loop on a dynastic succession plan that bypasses meritocratic competition. Let's look at the actual basketball reality. Clark is a heliocentric offensive engine. She creates offense for the entire team. She has gravity that starts at 35 feet. She bends defenses until they break, creating space for everyone else. Paige Bueckers is an efficient scoring hybrid. She is surgical in the mid-range. She finishes plays within a structure. She is conservative with the ball. The USAB style historically prefers low turnovers. This is the metric they will use to snub Clark. They will point to her turnover numbers and say she is high risk. They will point to Paige's efficiency and say she is safe. By framing the point guard role as a game manager role rather than a dynamic creator role, the UConn contingent can justify selecting Bueckers over Clark despite Clark's superior professional production. This is the agenda. It is the pre-selection of criteria that guarantees a specific outcome. And this brings us to the physical manifestation of this conflict, the December 2025 training camp in Durham. This isn't just a practice, it is a tactical ambush. Theories circulating in independent media suggest this camp is structured as a trap for Clark, an environment designed to expose her weaknesses while highlighting the strengths of the system players. Look at the roster composition. It is a carefully curated ecosystem. You have the UConn block, Paige Bueckers, likely Diana Taurasi hanging around in a legacy capacity, Brianna Stewart, Nafisa Collier. These players operate with a shared telepathy developed under Auriemma. They know the plays, they know the terminology, they know where to look for each other on the cut. They will dominate the scrimmage flow because they are playing a language they have spoken since they were 18 years old. Then you have the anti-Clark faction. The presence of veterans who were part of the 2024 squad creates a psychological barrier. We have heard the reports. We have seen the on-court friction during the WNBA season. There is resentment regarding Clark's commercial success. There is jealousy over the Nike signature deal, the private jets, the fame. If Clark walks into that gym, she is walking into a locker room that has spent the last year rolling their eyes at her. And watching from the sidelines are the evaluators. With Sue Bird in the executive suite and Jennifer Rosati on the committee, every turnover Clark commits will be magnified. Every bad pass will be noted in red ink. Conversely, Paige Bueckers' mistakes, those will be contextualized. They will be called learning moments. They will be forgiven because she is family. The confirmation bias in this evaluation process is the single biggest risk factor for Caitlin Clark. Historically, these camps are black boxes. They are notoriously opaque. Media access is limited to specific windows that do not capture the intensity of the scrimmages. This closed-door management allows the coaching staff to filter the information that reaches the public. If Clark is frozen out of the offense by veteran players who refuse to run her sets, if they ice her out, the public will never see it. We will only hear the leaked reports from anonymous sources saying that Clark struggled to adapt or she lacked physicality. They will control the narrative because they control the cameras. This leads us to the ultimate tool of exclusion, the system fit trap. The argument goes like this. We don't need a high-usage guard. We need someone who can move the ball to Aja Wilson and Brianna Stewart. It sounds reasonable, right? But it's a trap. If Clark plays her natural game, she is labeled selfish or ball dominant. If she tries to play passively to fit in, she loses the special quality that makes her elite, and suddenly she looks inferior to a natural role player. It is a lose-lose situation, and the solution for USAB: select Paige Bueckers. She naturally plays a deferential, efficient style that complements the veteran stars without threatening their hierarchy. This argument allows USAB to exclude the most popular player in the world while maintaining a facade of basketball purity. But wait, there is a wild card, a variable that complicates the UConn conspiracy. The new head coach, Kara Lawson. She isn't from UConn. She is a Tennessee Lady Vol legend. She played under Pat Summitt. Historically, Tennessee and UConn are oil and water. They are the Montagues and the Capulets. There is an optimistic view here. Perhaps Lawson is an independent broker. She has no loyalty to Ariema. She has praised Clark's game in the past. She understands the pressure of being a high-profile guard. Maybe she is the check on the UConn dominance. Maybe she is the one who says, no, we need the best player, period. But there is a pessimistic view, and it is gaining traction. It is the uniparty theory. Despite her Tennessee roots, Kara Lawson was handpicked by Sue Bird. Critics argue that the hatchet has been buried between the programs in favor of a unified establishment defense against the new wave of commercialized stars. Lawson has been integrated into the USAB system as an assistant and a 3x3 coach for years. She has proven she can play ball with the board. Her ascent was approved by the power brokers. Is she a new sheriff, or is she a company woman? And then there is Stephanie White. The competitor transcripts highlight this crucial connection. White is the head coach of the Indiana Fever, Clark's coach, but she is also an assistant coach for Team USA. On the surface, this helps Clark. But dig deeper. The transcripts allege that White checks some of the same boxes as the establishment. She is part of the coaching fraternity that values the traditional hierarchy. Here is the dilemma. If Stephanie White advocates too hard for Clark, she risks alienating the USAB brass she works for. If she doesn't advocate enough, she betrays her star player. The suggestion is that White might be part of the agenda, implicitly complicit in managing Clark's expectations rather than fighting for her inclusion. It puts Clark in a lonely position where even her own advocate is compromised by institutional loyalty. We also cannot ignore the fallout from Cheryl Reeve. She may no longer be the head coach, but her shadow looms large over this camp. The hostility between Reeve and the so-called Clark maniacs was a defining subplot of the 2024 season. The rumors that Reeve manipulated the all-star coaching assignments to avoid coaching Clark speak to a level of pettiness that is hard to fathom at the professional level. Reeve's engagement with anti-Clark tweets, her combative relationship with reporters like Christine Brennan, these were not isolated incidents. They exposed a culture of defensiveness within the WNBA's old guard. Reeve is still a power broker. She is a mentor to many current staff members. Her philosophy that rookies must wait their turn and that the media hype around Clark is disrespectful to veterans remains the dominant culture in the locker room Clark is trying to enter. So why? Why would USA Basketball sideline the Golden Goose? Why would they alienate millions of new fans? A rational observer would say it makes no sense. But this isn't about rationality. It is about capital and control. It is the economics of envy. Caitlin Clark's presence drives viewership, ticket sales, and merchandise to unprecedented levels. But that influx of attention has not been evenly distributed. Her massive $28 million signature deal with Nike creates friction with other Nike athletes like Aja Wilson, who had to wait years for similar recognition. The USAB roster is largely a Nike ecosystem, and internal brand politics play a massive role. The current generation of stars, Stewart, Wilson, Taurasi, feels they laid the foundation of the league. They view Clark's instant ascension as an invalidation of their years of labor. By controlling USAB, they control the highest prestige marker in the sport, the gold medal. They ensure that Clark cannot bypass the hierarchy to claim GOAT status without their permission. They hold the keys to the kingdom, and they aren't just going to hand them over because she sells jerseys. It is the grow the game paradox. USAB claims they want to grow the game, but their actions suggest they only want to grow it their way. If Clark plays and leads Team USA to gold, the media narrative becomes Caitlin Clark saves Team USA. That is unacceptable to the establishment. They pride themselves on a team-first culture. But if Paige Bueckers helps lead the team, the narrative reinforces the system. It says the UConn way produces another champion. It validates Ariema. It validates Bird. It proves that the system works and that the individual is unnecessary. We have a case study for this, the 2024 snub. It serves as the precedent for 2026. The committee cited experience, defensive versatility, and familiarity with the FIBA game. But the reality was they selected veteran guards who were statistically inferior to Clark in the WNBA. Diana Taurasi was in the twilight of her career. The criteria were weaponized, and they can be weaponized again. Look at the circular logic. They say you need international experience to make the team, but Clark has zero senior FIBA experience because they didn't pick her. Meanwhile, Bueckers will likely be given reps in lesser tournaments to build her experience resume. It is a logic trap designed to keep the outsider out. They will say Clark is an average defender. They will say Paige is a better fit. They will say the core has chemistry with Paige. So what is the verdict? The investigation confirms that the structural conditions for a UConn power play are fully in place. The executor is Sue Bird. The narrative is being driven by Gino Ariema. The precedent was set in 2024. And the opportunity is the December 2025 camp. Expect Caitlin Clark to be invited to the pool. They have to invite her. But do not be surprised if she is managed out of the final roster for the 2026 World Cup. It will likely be cited as a mutual decision for rest or injury recovery. Meanwhile, Paige Bueckers will be fast-tracked into the rotation. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It is the operating system of USA basketball. It is an insulated aristocracy, not a meritocratic democracy. The elevation of Paige Bueckers represents the establishment's attempt to co-opt the young superstar demographic without accepting the disruptive outsider baggage that comes with Clark. The ball is in their court, but the eyes of the world are watching. They got away with it in Paris because they won gold. But if they try to pull the same move for Berlin in 2026, they might find that the fans are no longer willing to accept the UConn way as the only way. The power play has begun. The question is, does Caitlin Clark have a counter move, or is the game already rigged? Let's dig deeper into the black box of selection. Jennifer Rosati's criteria are a moving target. In 2024, she said there were other players harder to cut because they checked more boxes. But look at the inconsistency. In previous eras, Breanna Stewart was included on senior teams very early in her career to groom her. Stewart played in the World Championships before she had played a minute of WNBA basketball. Why? Because she was UConn. She was the chosen one. Caitlin Clark, despite being a generational talent arguably exceeding Stewart's collegiate hype, was denied this grooming spot. It is highly probable that Paige Bueckers will receive the treatment Clark was denied. She will be invited to camps given low-leverage minutes and integrated slowly. This proves that the experience barrier is permeable for those inside the family. The chemistry argument is the ultimate trump card. Because the USAB core is built around UConn alumni, a new UConn player like Bueckers automatically has chemistry. She speaks the language. Clark, coming from Iowa in the Fever, speaks a different dialect. Her integration requires the veterans to adapt to her range and passing velocity. In a short training camp, the committee can easily argue that Paige just fit better with the group, masking the nepotistic advantage of the system. This is a media proxy war. The narratives are being monetized. The UConn conspiracy feeds the beast of sports debate. It provides a tangible enemy, the elites, and a victim, Clark. The reality is likely a mix of legitimate basketball philosophy clashes and petty interpersonal jealousies, but the structural unfairness is undeniable. The deck is stacked. Let's look at the strategic implications of the 2026 World Cup cycle. The roster selected for Berlin usually foreshadows the Olympic roster. There are 3 scenarios. Scenario A is the unity roster. USAB bows to pressure and includes Clark, but plays her limited minutes behind Chelsea Gray or Kelsey Plum. This avoids a PR disaster but neutralizes her impact. Scenario B is the UConn victory. Clark is cut. Bueckers makes the team. USAB wins gold. The establishment says, "See, we didn't need her." This solidifies the UConn grip for another decade. But scenario C is the mutiny. If Clark is excluded and the team struggles, perhaps losing to France or Australia, the backlash will be catastrophic. The Fire Everyone movement will target Bird and Rizzotti specifically. Sue Bird is savvy. She knows excluding Clark entirely is a nightmare. The most likely outcome is marginalization. Clark makes the team but rides the bench, while Bueckers is given the glamour minutes to build her brand as the real Team USA point guard. If we break down the raw tools in a box-checking comparison, on paper, if you strip away the name, Paige Bueckers fits the traditional USAB criteria better than Clark. She has high ball security. She has high shooting efficiency. She is a plug-and-play connector. This is the shield the committee will use. They will say, "We aren't anti-Clark, we are pro-efficiency." But this report exposes that this traditional criteria was built by UConn coaches to favor UConn players, making the system inherently biased against a player like Clark, who breaks the mold. We are looking at a triad of power: Gino the architect, Sue the exec, and Jen the gatekeeper. They have created a web of connections that is almost impossible to penetrate. Paige Bueckers is not the villain here. She is the Trojan horse. She is the weapon being used to push Clark out. The December camp is the setup. It is the place where the rules are written to make Clark fail and Paige shine. The impending clash is inevitable. Clark has the fans. She has the momentum. But UConn has the keys to the gym. Who wins? As we move toward 2026, keep your eyes on the roster announcements. Watch who gets the invite to the mini-camps. Watch who gets the praise in the press conferences. And remember this dossier, because when the final 12 names are read, and if Caitlin Clark isn't on that list, or if she is sitting at the end of the bench while Paige Bueckers runs the point, you will know exactly how it happened. You will know the mechanics of the power play. This is the state of USA basketball. It is a collision of legacy and revolution, and the revolution is being televised, but the decisions are being made in the dark. Thanks for watching.